The funeral flowers had only just begun to fade when the call started. I was in my kitchen on a Thursday morning 2 weeks after we buried Helen, watching the steam curl from a mug I hadn't touched. Dark green ceramic chipped at the hand-luff fathers. Day gift from my granddaughter Emily years ago now felt heavy foreign, like it belonged to a man he no longer was. Everything felt foreign. The house, my reflection in the hallway mirror, and even my voice when I answered the relentless phone calls from my children. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Can't comment where you're watching from. Dad, we need to talk about the house, Mark's voice carried that restrained impatience I'd known since he was a teenager asking for money. Only now at 38, he wasn't asking. I set the mug down without drinking. Good morning to you too, Mark. Don't start with me, he said. Laura and I have been talking. This place is too big for you alone. The taxes, the upkeep, it's not realistic. We've already found a buyer. There is no mortgage, I said. The words came out flat factual. Helen and I had paid it off 6 years ago, but I'd never told the kids. They assumed and I let them. Silence. Then a short laugh, sharp dismissive, the same. One he inherited from me, though I'd never used it like a blade. Dad, please. Mom's pension barely covered her medications. We all know you're under strain. I walked to the window above the sink. Looking out at the garden Helen and I had tended for 25 years, the rosemary leaned into the stone path. The lemon tree needed pruning. Every plant, every stone wall had become a monument to everything I'd lost. You're worried about me? Is that it? I asked. I'm worried about what's practical, he replied, each word clipped. Could put the money from the sale to good use. Laura's got Emily's tuition, and Laura and I stopped. Listening to his wife's name, my mind was already building Thessany. Mark at their dining table laptop, open a spreadsheet, glowing columns, Labelladit's house sale, price proceeds split. I knew the layout of his thinking. I had taught him numbers when he was 8 years old, making him calculate change for the ice cream truck. Now he was calculating. Mark, I said, keeping my tone even, you've been planning this for a while. That's called being responsible, he countered. We can't sit around until something happens to you. I let the sentence hang there, ugly and unpolished. Until something happens to you. Thanks for your concern, I said. My voice as flat as the lemon tree's shadow across the path. I'll think about it, Dad. But he ended the call before he could sell me my own life in bullet points. The house was quiet again, but the silence had changed shape. It was no longer the stillness of a home in mourning. It was the pause between one blow and the next. I rinsed the coffee down the drain. My hands smelled faintly of the rosemary Helen used to cut for the Sunday roast. My name is Daniel Pierce. Friends call me Dan. I live in a one-story ranch in Ventura, California. A place Helen and I bought when Mark still had front teeth missing, and the neighbors. Kids played kickball in the cul-de-sac until the streetlights blinked on. We planted the lemon tree the spring after we moved in. 2 decades later, its branches arced over the stone path like a yellow ornamented prayer. The day after the funeral, I found Helen's letter. She tucked it where I couldn't miss it if I ever tried to make her chicken with 40 cloves of garlic again inside the plastic sleeve of the recipe. Binder she guarded like an heirloom. The envelope had my name in her quick, decisive hand. Dan, honey, if you're reading this. The house feels loud with quiet and you're trying to fix things because that's how you love when you don't know what else to do? Sit, drink some water, then read. I did a thing. 2 things, actually. First, I never told the kids. But I inherited my Aunt Margot's casita outside Santa Fe Road. The adobe one with the blue door we stayed at for a week when Mark was in middle school and pretended to hate art galleries but stared at every Georgia O'Keeffe anyway. It's ours, no mortgage, taxes paid through next year. Keys are in the red cookie tin with the sunflowers. It's under the recipe for snickerdoodles. Second, there's an account at Coastal Redwood Credit. Union ending in 7,314 with $480,000. Before, you panic. Margot was better with mutual funds than marriages. And I added what I could from the shop and the substitute teaching and the little checks Mom left me. It's in your name only, not because I don't trust the kids I do, mostly, but because I don't want our old age negotiated on a spreadsheet. Use it to keep the lights on, to keep the lemon tree watered, to fix the casita's roof, and to help someone when it feels right. And please, please, do not let anyone, even out of love, make you smaller. I know your heart. You'll try to give them everything. Give them your time. Give Emily your terrible dad jokes. But keep the house. Until you're ready to let go. You don't have to prove anything. Call attorney Alana Cho, business card taped to page 3. She knows all this. The living trust is updated. The house is in it. Mark is good at sounding certain. So are you. But paper be more certain than both of you. If you get to New Mexico, stand in the doorway of the casita at sunset. It's the hill's turn. The color of peaches. That color healed me once. I think it can help you too. Leave a light on. I'll find my way to you. Love, H. I pressed my thumb to the ink until it smudged. Then I pulled the sunflower tin from the pantry and felt the weight of the keys in my palm. Cold. Certain. I didn't tell the kids. Not about Santa Fe. Not about the money. Not that day. Not the next. Instead, I did what men do when the ground shifts. We find edges to hold. I called Attorney Cho and sat in her bright office while a goldfish moved in a slow square behind her shoulder. Your wife was thorough, she said, sliding a file toward me. Revocable living trust updated last June. You are sole trustee. The Ventura property is titled to the trust. No sale without your signature. Durable power of attorney documents for health and finance. Yours designate Mark and your daughter. Nora as Cajuns, but only if you're incapacitated. Not dead. Which you are not. Not yet, I said. And she gave me the kind of look professionals give old men when we joke with the Reaper. Mr. Pierce, she said, tapping the file. You're okay. Your son can list a house on Zillow. All day long. Without your signature and trustee approval, it's theater. If he tries to file anything at the recorder's office without you, we'll stop it. What about tempers? I asked. Feelings. Ah, she said. That's not a legal question. That's a kitchen table question. We can put guardrails on the cliff, but we can't stop anyone from driving angry. On Sunday, Nora called. My daughter has a voice like a cello, steady, and too honest to sell you anything. Mark's being Mark, she said. He called me this morning and asked me to convince you to be reasonable. What does reasonable look like? I asked. According to him, you signing anything he slides under your nose? According to me, you breathing? Eating? Maybe not getting on ladders? I'll do one of those, I said. She was quiet for a beat. Had a plan, didn't she? She usually did, I said. Dad, Nora said gently, whenever you're ready to let me in, I'm here. And when Mark pushes, I'll be the brake. The next Thursday, Mark didn't call. He showed up. I heard his SUV before I saw it, some engine note that announces success and debt at once. He came up the walk with his jaw squared and Laura too. Steps behind him in white sneakers that looked new enough to squeak. We met with a realtor, he said in the foyer. Not hello. She has a buyer who wants to do a full remodel. Quick close. Cash. You'll have to tell her to buy someone. Elsa's house, I said. Dad, be serious, he said. The place needs work. The plumbing is fine, I said. I replaced the pet trap under the guest bath in October. Unless you mean the plumbing of your expectations. Laura slipped past him into the kitchen and did a slow, assessing scan like a woman staging a place in her mind. She was a kind person, who got mean when afraid. My son had been scared since Helen got sick. He hid it under logistics. Mark, I said, leading them to the dining table. Sit, please. He sat because he'd been raised to sit when told in that tone. I slid a folder across the wood. He read the first page. His mouth moved like a man chewing a tough piece of meat. He read the second. When he looked up, some of the heat had left. His face. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, small. About any of this? The trust? The protections? Because I didn't want to have this exact conversation with the two of you a week after burying your mother, I said. Because grief makes greedy people out of the best of us. Because your mother asked me not to, or it looked like she'd swallowed attack. We're trying to help, she said. You could fall. I could, I said. I also could live. In the house your mother painted these walls in, the house where Emily learned to ride a bike in the driveway. While you ran beside her, her face twitched. I'd reminded her of a good version of herself and it hurt. Mark pivoted. The way he always has, when one argument fails, he picks up another. Okay, he said. Okay, keep the house. But we need to downsize the stuff. Bring boxes. Saturday, we'll start with the garage. Bring all the boxes you want, I said. They won't be for my things. He frowned. What does that mean? I stood, walked to the garage door, and opened it. Inside, a neat wall of taped boxes. Rows 3 high, stacked like a promise. Black marker labels in my blocky hand. Laura Closet Winter Mark, Golf Extra, Sedimally Baby. Clothis Laura Holiday Storage Markdal Spares, these are yours, I said. They've been living here because your HOA doesn't like garage clutter. I packed them. I'll help you load the SUV. Mark's mouth worked. Laura opened hers, closed it. Then she said in a voice so light it almost wasn't there, thank you. They carried boxes until sweat beaded along Mark's hairline and made a dark crescent on Laura's neat shirt. I didn't gloat. I didn't crow. I handed them water. And gloves and asked about Emily's school project on the gold rush and told Laura I still had the nativity set she'd liked when she was 22 if she wanted to take it home by late afternoon. The garage wall was gone. The house felt more like mine and less like a storage unit for people who planned my future while keeping their Christmas on my shelves. At dusk, they stood by the SUV, panting. Mark leaned an arm on the open hatch and looked at me with the jaundiced light of remorse, Dad, he said. Mom, she really left all this paperwork. Trusts. She did, I said. And you, he said. You're okay? I'm sad, I said. I'm breathing. I'm okay. He nodded, and for a moment, I almost told him about Santa Fe, about the casita with the blue door and the way the hills in Galistio turned to fire at sunset, about $480,000 sitting in a quiet account like a patient animal. IDN, single quotes. 2 days later, my phone rang at 7:13 a.m. I was trimming rosemary in the yard. The world still bleached with early light, Dad, Mark said, breathless in that excited. Way boys get when they've caught a frog or a deal? Great news. We're under contract. All cash. They want possession in a week so they can start work before the holidays. Start packing, the house is sold. The rosemary knife rested in my palm. I looked at the path, at the lemon tree, at the sun just rubbing its eyes over the roofline. My heart didn't jump, it sank. Then it steadied. I had already packed. I said, oh, good, he said. I'll bring, but they weren't my boxers, I said. They were yours. Listen closely. You didn't sell my house.
Oh?
You listed it with a signature you don't have, and a permission you were not given. Take the listing down, Mark. Silence. Then the spark of anger trying to light kindling. Don't talk to me like I'm taking down, I repeated. And if you ever try to file anything again without me, Attorney Cho will make a meal of it, you understand? He hung up. 10 minutes later, he was in my driveway, hair uncombed, shirt half-tucked, fury cooling into embarrassment before he crossed the porch. I made a mistake, he said without preface. I used the old POA. I thought it still. I'm fixing it. I nodded. Fix it. I was trying to help, he said. A boy with a broken kite and string in his fists. You were trying to control what scares you, I said. It scares you that I'm alone. It scares you that you can't fix death. So you decided to fix me. He swallowed. Okay, he said. Okay. Sat at the table with Helen's yellow placemats and drank coffee that tasted like apology. He told me about a rough quarter at work and how the bonus he'd counted on might not materialize. He told me about Emily's braces and the way college brochures were starting to arrive in drifts. He told me Laura's mother, Beverly, had opinions about everything from grout to grief. Do you need money? I asked quietly. No, he said fast. I need you not to be mad at me. I'm not, I said, and I almost believed it. After he left, the house felt wider. I stood in the hallway and stared at the framed photos Helen hung too low each. One, a stop motion of a life I recognized but couldn't re-enter. Mark, gap-toothed, holding a lopsided snowman cookie. Nora in pigtails at the Ventura Pier, wind blowing strands across her mouth as she laughed. Helen, 29, in a red dress at Doug and Linda's wedding, eyes on me like she thought I was a miracle she'd landed by mistake. I went to the pantry and took down the sunflower tin again, because touching the keys had become a way of remembering that I could choose. 3 days later, I pointed my truck east. I told no one I was leaving. I set the porch light on a timer. I left a note with Nora under the welcome mat that said "Only you," with Attorney Cho's card paperclipped to it, just in case. I packed a duffel with enough clothes to admit I wasn't coming back in a week. I locked the door and drove until the ocean smell gave way to the flat temps of desert. Until the road lifted and dropped and lifted again, like the chest of a sleeping giant in Santa Fe. I found the casita exactly as we'd left it that long ago summer. Blue door, hand-painted number 211. Metal sun tacked above the lintel like a joke about warmth that New Mexico knows better than California. When I opened the door, cool adobe breathed out. The place smelled faintly of creosote and something citrus, maybe a ghost of someone else's oranges. A woman was sweeping the stoop next door. Gray braid, denim shirt, the posture of someone who taught posture to others. She lifted a hand. "You must be Helen's Dan," she said. "I'm Ruthie. Different Ruthie than the aunt. Everybody's a Ruth here if you stay long enough." I smiled. Guilty. "She told me to look for you one day," Ruthie said. "Said you'd come when it was time." "She told you that?" asked, throat tightening. "She told the chili ristras, honey," Ruthie said, nodding toward the string of dried red pods hanging by the door. "She told anyone who'd listen. My Dan's stubborn," she said. "But he'll do the right thing eventually." "What's the right thing?" I asked. Ruthie shrugged. "Depends on the day. Today it might be eating and then sleeping. Tomorrow, it might be fixing that loose sill in your kitchen. Next week, it might be telling the truth to somebody who thinks they want it." She brought me pozole in a chipped blue bowl that night, ate it standing over the sink, salty tears making the flavor brighter. I slept on the couch because I couldn't make myself climb the 3 steps to the bed. In the morning, I went outside and leaned on the wall and watched the light change the same way it does everywhere, and also differently. Days arranged themselves, mornings. Walk to the trailhead, watch the pin and shadow shorten. Afternoons, sweep dust from corners that weren't going to be clean for more than an hour anyway. Evenings, sit, soup, stare in the casita's built-in shelves. I found Helen's notes from that summer grocery list in a New Mexico hand: cumin, anise, red chili, green chili. Don't confuse them. Instructions for the swamp cooler. Of galleries with stars by the ones she liked. On the last page, a single line in pencil: "This is a place for mending." On the 5th day, my phone buzzed with a picture from Nora Moley. Braces off, smiling with the incandescent relief of a kid, whose mouth finally looks how she imagined it would in her dreams. Under the photo, Nora wrote, "Come back when you're ready. There are people who want to see your face." I typed, "Soon." I didn't hit send. That afternoon, my screen lit again. "Mark, call me," the text said. "Urgent." I didn't want to. I did anyway. He answered on the first ring. "Dad," he said without air. "A man came by the house, said he had papers for you to sign. Laura's mom, she said he's a friend, that he can file a deed quick. I told him to get off your porch, but Dad, I think she tried to file a quitclaim," I said softly. Silence. Then, "Yeah, Attorney Cho will handle it," I said. "Listen to me. The next time anyone shows up to move your father like furniture, you call the police before you call me." "Sorry," he said. It came out in a rush, like air exploding from a popped tire, screwing everything up. "I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm making a then stop trying and start listening," I said. "Come to Santa Fe, alone. No spreadsheets, no buyers. Bring a pair of work gloves." "We have a sill to fix, Dad," he said. "Have work, so do I," I said. "So do men who need to unlearn the worst parts of themselves." He was quiet for a long time. "Okay," he said at last. "Okay." He booked a flight for Saturday. In the meantime, I made a list. Not of the kind he'd bring no columns or projections. Just a page in Helen's notebook under a heading she would have liked. Things to set right. The kitchen sill Ruthie's. Right. It wobbles, the blue door latch sticks. The truth sticks worse. Saturday dawned with that thin, high desert gold. I picked Mark up at the airport. He carried no suitcase, just a backpack and his phone like talismans. "This is it?" he asked, stepping through the blue door as if he were crossing into a story he hadn't been told as a child. "This is it," I said, "your mother's other heart." We worked all morning without words. I handed him a pry bar. He leaned his, weighed into old nails, and popped them clean. I showed him where adobe gives under pressure and where it holds. He nicked his knuckle and didn't make a sound, just stuck the cut in his mouth like a boy, and then wrapped it with the tape I handed him at lunch. We ate burritos from a place Ruthie swore wouldn't poison us with cilantro. We sat on the low. Wallen watched a roadrunner sprint across the street like he'd just remembered an appointment. "Why didn't you tell us about this?" he asked finally, gesturing at the casita, the hills, the whole adobe miracle. "Because you and I needed a place without the sound of your mother in the next room," I said. "Because I needed a place that didn't ask me to be a certain man by habit. Because your mother asked me to wait." He nodded, then pressed the heel of his hand into his eye, like he was unscrewing something. "Dad," he said, we're not okay. Me and Laura, money's tight. I made some not great, my choices. And I felt guilty every time I looked at you sitting in that house alone, and guilt made me push. Pushing is what I'm good at." "You're good at a lot of things," I said. "You're good at forgiving your daughter when she dents the car. You're good at making pancakes. On Saturdays, you're good at taking my opinions like they're scripture and then doing what you want anyway," he huffed. "That last one's true." We worked until the sill sat true and the latch clicked and Ruthie clapped once like a teacher. Blue leaning evening, we sat at the small kitchen table with 2 bowls of pozole and the quiet we'd earned. "Dad," Mark said, "how much did Mom leave you? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I said. "There's enough for me to live. Without making you sell my roof, there's enough for me to help where it matters. But I'm not handing money to anyone who treats me like a problem to solve. When I help, it'll be because a man showed up with a wrench." He looked at his hands. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, "Okay," he said. "I can do that." We walked out into the courtyard. The hills were doing what Helen promised. They were the color of peaches in a bowl. I put my hand on my son's shoulder. He didn't flinch. He leaned. "Tomorrow," I said, "we'll go to the market. You'll buy something Laura hates and tell her you love it. Then you'll fly home. You'll call Attorney Cho and apologize for existing into her inbox. You'll tell Beverly she doesn't get to sign my name in her head anymore. You'll pick up your boxes and take them to a storage unit with a lock that works." "And you?" he asked. "I'll come home in a week." I said, "I'll be in Ventura for Christmas. We'll put lights on the lemon tree. I'll make Helen's roast and cut the rosemary too short and pretend I didn't." He nodded. "Deal." He went to bed. I sat at the small kitchen table and took out Helen's letter again. I traced her name like it was a map. When I looked up, the porch light painted a pale square on the courtyard. Beyond it, the desert breathed. From the other room, Mark called softly, the way boys do when the dark edges in. "Dad, you still up?" "Yeah, thanks," he said. "For what?" "For not selling me my own life in bullet points," he said. And I laughed, loud, surprised. A sound I hadn't made since the hospital. I came back to Ventura on the 22nd. The house smelled like dust and lemon and the faintest ghost of Helen's lavender drawer sachets. Nora came over with a string of lights and a ladder she didn't let me climb. Mark and Laura arrived with a Tupperware of sugar cookies Emily had decorated to look like ornaments and people. It meant half of them looked like something a festive alien would craft. We ate dinner around my old table and did not feel like we were sitting on top of an argument that had only just stopped burning. After dinner, Mark held Emily's hand and walked her to the lemon tree. He plugged in the lights. The tree glowed like a fairy tale that had finally decided to tell the truth. We were almost quiet enough then, almost still. "Attorney Cho, Mr. Pierce," she'd written. The attempted quitclaim was withdrawn. However, The realtor is angry and threatened a tortious interference claim. I've responded, you are protected. Also, a separate matter. I received a certified letter addressed to you from a V. Moreno in Santa Fe, care of your Aunt Margot's estate. Would you like me to forward or hold for pickup? V. Moreno. I knew that name. Margot's neighbor. Sculptor with hands like river stones and a voice that made everything sound like a story. Hold, I typed. I'll come by tomorrow. Everything okay? Nora asked, reading my face. It will be, I said, which is the most honest sentence a person can give in a life that changes its rules without asking. The next morning, in Cho's office, I opened the certified letter. Dan Margot wrote me a note to send you if Helen passed first. I prayed I'd never have to. I'm sorry. There's a box in your casita's closet top shelf, back left. It has both your names on it. It's not heavy, but it is important. Please open it when you're ready. It will explain why Helen wanted you to have the casita and what she asked me to do if you said no. With love, Valentina Moreno, back home. I stood in my bedroom and looked at the suitcase I had just unpacked and the clock that said Christmas. Eve was tomorrow and the lemon tree shining outside the window, like a promise. Dad. Mark called from the hallway. We're heading out. You good? I opened my mouth to say yes. I closed it. I need to go back to Santa Fe for one day, I said instead. He stared. Laura stared. Nora, bless her, just nodded. Christmas morning. I said, I'll be here. Promise. I drove at dawn. The highway was a ribbon again, then a rope. Then something that pulled me toward the place where, apparently, more truth waited on a top shelf. At the casita, I stood on a chair and reached. Into the closet's back left corner, my fingers found a cardboard lip. I dragged the box forward. On the lid in Helen's hand for when he is ready, I took it to the kitchen table. I sat as if the weight of the box needed me to. I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, bound with a blue ribbon, a deed. A folder labeled Scholarships in Isidro. On top, a photograph I had never seen. Helen in New Mexico, young, hair shorter, eyes proud. She stood with a girl of about 9, dark hair, solemn smile, one hand holding Helen's, the other holding a clay bowl. On the back of the photo, Helen had written, in the way she wrote things meant for no one but me. Her name is Anna. She needed some place to stand. We made one. I sat back and felt the world tilt, not dangerously, but like a boat that finally hits the right current and leans into its own shape. The letters would have to wait. Christmas morning was coming, and I had promised my granddaughter a lemon tree with lights and a grandfather, who showed up when he said he would. I put the photo back in the box and tied the ribbon. I locked the casita and drove west, the desert. Falling behind me and the ocean waiting, in between them a road I knew how to take. Christmas Eve smelled like lemon peel and sugar. Nora strung lights along the fence while I held the spool and pretended I wasn't tempted to climb the ladder. Mark and Laura came with a Tupperware of sugar cookies that looked like ornaments and people, which meant half of them looked like small, festive accidents. Emily spun in the driveway with a sparkler after dark, laughter cutting clean through the cold. I didn't tell them I'd driven to Santa Fe at dawn and back by evening. I didn't tell them about the box with the blue ribbon. I tucked it behind my closet shoes the way a man tucks a letter near his heart and tells himself he'll read it when the house is quiet, at midnight, after everyone had gone, and the lemon tree glowed like a soft miracle outside the window. I sat on the edge of my bed and took out Helen's box. Oh, I didn't open it. On Christmas morning, we did gifts that made sense and a few that did not. Mark handed me a sweater a size too big and a bottle of something aged I don't have enough years left to fully appreciate. Nora gave me a Polaroid camera because she believes in pictures you can hold. Emily gave me a painting, the lemon tree, messy and brave. I gave her a necklace Helen had set aside years ago, simple silver, a small lemon charm. I told her it belonged to anyone who loved sour things enough to make them sweet. That afternoon, after the roast, after the rosemary, I cut too short because I could. I slipped into my room and closed the door. The house settled. The washer hummed. Voices floated from the living room, softened by distance, into something like music. I lifted the lid of the box. On top, the photograph. Helen in a loose dress, laughing, hair shorter, eyes proud. Her, a girl of 9 or 10, dark hair pulled back, one hand holding a clay bowl, the other looped through my wife's elbow like an anchor. On the back, in Helen's slant, her name is Anna. She needed some place to stand. We made one. Under the photo lay a folder, Scholarships San Isidro. I opened it and found articles of incorporation for a small nonprofit, filed 5. Years ago, San Isidro Arts and Apprenticeship Fund. Officers Valentina Moreno, President. Helen Pierce, Treasurer, Purpose, Microgrants and Apprenticeships for Local. Youth in Santa Fe County pursuing skilled trades or art. A handful of thank you notes were paper-clipped to the back penciled. Ms. Pierce read one in careful block letters. I bought brushes with the gift. I'm practicing every day so I can paint my grandma's hands the way they look when she rolls tortillas. Thank you. Another. Dear Miss Helen, Valentina said to write you a proper letter because you love proper letters. Got the apprenticeship. At Don's Body Shop, I promised not to drop the torque wrench. You showed me that hands can be smart. Rakoa set the folder aside and lifted a sheaf of letters bound with blue ribbon, the top one, addressed. For Dan, when he is ready. Honey, you're a patient man. You'll read this sentence 3 times. Before you let yourself feel it, I loved a girl who wasn't mine like she was mine, not in the way you fear. In the way a woman loves a child who needs a kitchen table to do homework at and a hand to hold at. School lights. Her name is Anna. She lived next door to Aunt Margot for 2 years with her mother, Alma, who cleaned offices at night and learned the English word for tired so well you could hear it in her bones. I met them on that first summer we stayed a week, when you and Mark went to the car museum, and I wandered into a pottery class because it was cool inside, and I liked the sound of a wheel spinning. Anna was 9, serious, a face like a held breath. Alma asked if she could sit in the studio. While she worked because after-school care cost a fortune and the neighbor who usually watched Anna had moved, I put a sponge in Anna's hand and told her to listen to the clay. She did. The bowl in the photo is the first thing she made that didn't fold in on itself before it learned to hold. After your sister's surgery the next year, when you went back to California early, I stayed in Santa Fe to help Margot. Helping meant driving her to appointments. It also meant giving Anna and Alma rides and leaving a casserole on their stoop when pride made the doorbell dangerous. One night Alma knocked Wald out at midnight. The man she'd left had found them. He sat on my kitchen floor while the swamp cooler rattled, and I told her about every woman I'd ever known who got out and kept going. The next morning, we went to legal aid and then to Valentina, who knows every helper in this town. Anna stood between us like a stake in the ground. We made a place for them for a while. They did the rest. Years later, Anna was 16 and taller than me when she showed me a scholarship brochure. It's for ballerinas and boys who play violins, she said. What about people who want to fix things? What about kids who make things you can hold? So I asked Margot to help me set up something small. Something that said, learning with your hands is holy too. We started the San Isidro Fund. It's not much, but it's steady. The casita that's about more than us. 2, it's a refuge and a workshop. If you're ready, keep it for 5 years. Use the front room as a studio or a classroom once a week. Let kids like Anna sit at the table and do homework while the swamp cooler rattles. Valentina knows who. If you can't, if it hurts, if it's too much. If you need sea air, only give the casita to the fund. The deed is in the box, signed by me, with a transfer ready in case you say no. No shame, I mean it. I just wanted you to have first right to say yes to a life I can see you in. Dan. The one where you teach a boy how to hold a wrench like it won't bite him. The one where you tell a girl with a steady hand that yes, she is an artist and also an electrician if she wants. The money at Coastal Redwood? You always wanted to start something and never had time. Here it is. Build the porch rails. Buy the snacks. Pay a kid's first semester at a place that smells like sawdust. Keep the lemon tree watered. I love you. Don't let our son mistake control for care. He gets that from you. and from a world that rewards men for grabbing the wheel. Show him how to sit in the passenger seat and read the map well. If you need to be mad at me for not telling you all this in the clean light of a normal day, be mad. Then come to New Mexico and let the hills make a fool of your anger. There. Good at it. Yours and all, we built, and all we didn't, but can. I had to stand up. The room felt small in the way rooms feel small when they've been made bigger by something you can't yet hold. The next letter down was from Valentina.Dawn. Helen asked me to be a stubborn friend. Agreed. The box has a deed prepared by Helen, transferring a remainder interest in the casita to the fund. That means you, as trustee, keep the casita as long as you need. When you're done or gone, it becomes a community workshop. If you can't bear it, call me. We'll do it sooner. Either way, no one, not a realtor, not a son with a spreadsheet, gets to flip this place like a pancake. It's the griddle, Anna. Is 24 now. She's at UNM Studio Art and Construction Management because of course she is. She comes home on weekends. She runs Saturday classes at the community center, teaches kids to throw a bowl and to measure twice. If you're willing, she'll run them at your kitchen table. It's 2. With love and a bullhorn if needed. Valley set the letters down. In the living room, someone started a movie, and someone else made a joke, and for a second, it sounded like it did. Before the world redefined normal, I put the lid back on the box. I went out to the yard. The lemon tree hummed with Christmas lights and winter bees. I had thought the second house was a secret to keep me safe. It was a key to a door I hadn't known I wanted to walk through. January arrived with rain. In Ventura, rain makes everything smell honest. I met Attorney Cho with a list I'd written on the back of a holiday card, the only paper I could find. That wasn't a legal document or a grocery receipt. I want to formalize the San Isidro Fund side of this, I said, handing her the card. If I get hit by a bus, I don't want a county clerk deciding whether the casita becomes an Airbnb. She grinned. We can avoid the bus and the Airbnb, she said. We spent an hour making words behave. She added a no contest clause to the trust bell, tan suspenders, said updated a memorandum about the casita's remainder interest, and drafted a simple grant agreement I could use to give money without breaking anyone's dignity. Or inviting the IRS over for coffee? You're building something, she said, sliding the signed pages into a folder with my name embossed on it. Like I was the sort of man who gets his name embossed on folders. People like to fight over piles. They fight less over projects. Projects ask them to work. That afternoon, Mark texted, "Can we come by tonight? Laura's mom wants to apologize," her words, believe it or not. I stared at those parentheses. The way you stare at a fox standing in your backyard, half expecting it to vanish into the bushes and half expecting it to ask for dinner. I typed, "Dinner's at 6. Beverly arrived in a camel coat that probably had a name and boots that didn't touch puddles. She carried a lemon tart in a white box, and her mouth tried to decide if it wanted to be kind or right. "Thank you for having us," she said, not looking at the rosemary by the path as if she were refusing to acknowledge any plant that hadn't been curated by a landscaper. "Come in," I said. "Watch your step." We did not waste time, sad. The tart sat between us like a prop in a play that had gone through too many rewrites. "Mr. Pierce," she said. I overstepped, told Mark to be decisive. I told him a man should lead. Out. I tried to help him lead by pushing you. "I'm sorry." I could see the shape of the expense and the tightening around her eyes. "Thank you," I said. "And I'm sorry for calling the policeman on your friend when he tried to get me to sign a deed on my porch." She flinched and then nodded. "Fair," she said. "We can be done then," I said. Her mouth twitched. "I don't know how to be done," she said. "My ex took my house from me one piece of paper at a time. I told myself I'd never let that happen to Laura, that I'd control the paper this time. Paper isn't the house," I said. "People are." She looked at Laura, then at Mark, then at Emily in the next room, building a Lego lemon tree that came with 1,000 unnecessary parts. Beverly's face folded into something like grief. "I can try to be less loud," she said. "Just don't sign my name in your head," I said. and she huffed a surprised laugh that made her softer around the edges. We ate. We did not argue. It felt like a miracle you don't clap for because you don't want to scare it. The miracle lasted 6 days. On the 7th, moving truck idled in front of my house at 9 in the morning. 2 men in matching sweatshirts hopped out and unfolded a ramp. A woman in an expensive parka and a real estate agent smile stepped onto my porch and rang the bell. "Mr. Pierce," she said when I opened the door. "I'm Trish Barrett with Barrett Realty. We have a signed purchase agreement and keys to pick up. My buyer would like to do a quick walkthrough." I looked past her at the truck, at the men like a punctuation mark that insisted a sentence was over. I looked at the folder. On my entryway table, with Cho's letterhead peeking like a friendly witness, no. Trisha's smile held on by professional glue. "Mr. Pierce, the buyer is in her car. We have a contract. You have a piece of paper someone else signed?" I said. "I have a house my wife and I built a marriage in. Attorney Cho can send you the CSI Ciandicist again if you misplaced." "The first one," she stiffened, "which is how salespeople show you their skeletons." "I'm calling the buyer," she said. "And your son?" She did. 10 minutes later, Mark pulled up fast, car door slamming like a gavel. He took the porch steps in 2 strides. His face was a map of old roads, cleared, repaved, and then, under pressure, buckling. "Dad," he said. Hands up, breath visible. "In the cool morning, let me handle this." "Handled it last time," I said. "We're going to handle it differently." Trish stepped in, words first. "Mr. Grady, I explained to your father that the buyer has no mark," said, surprising both of us. "No, Trish, there's no contract. There's no sale. I told you I didn't have authority. You said you'd make it work. You don't get to make my dad move with a truck and a smile." She blinked. The men on the curb looked at each other like they'd accidentally walked into a family play and forgotten their lines. Mark turned. To me, he took a breath. "I did call the buyer," he said. I panicked. "Money's dad. Money's bad. I thought if we could just start packing." I said, letting the words hang between us, familiar enough now to be a ritual that needed to end. He shut his eyes. "Yeah," he whispered. Then louder, to be heard by the agent and the men and the lemon tree pretending to be Switzerland, to start. "Packing the house is sold?" I could have gotten angry then. It was waiting for me, a code I could shrug into without looking. Instead, I did what Helen would have done. I told the truth slowly. "I had already packed," I said. Mark opened, his eyes wary. "But they weren't my boxers," I said, voice even. "They were yours. Your golf clubs, your holiday totes, your storage. I cleared my house. I cleared my head. I packed my no right next to my patients. Now choose. Call the truck off or call Attorney Cho and learn why this is the last time you'll use my name to solve your fear." He looked at me, then at Trish, then at the men who were pretending very hard to be invisible. He pulled his phone out, called the truck off. Trish pressed her lips together until they went white. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she said. "Have her bring coffee," I said. "Cho likes a cappuccino." She left. The truck left. Street returned to itself, which is to say it became a place where kids learned to wobble on bikes. Again, Mark and I sat on the porch steps, January light, cold and honest. He folded his hands the way he did when he tried to pray at 17, and couldn't make his mouth say words he didn't believe. "I don't know how to stop doing this," he said, this grabbing the wheel, making a plan, telling everyone where to sit. "You do," I said. "You let go. It'll feel like dying. It won't be." He nodded. "'Kay," he said. Then, smaller, "Can you help me?" "Not with money. With not being this man, I can," I said. "But there are conditions." Flinched, and then laughed at himself. "Of course there are. You and I are going to Santa Fe for a week in February," I said. "You're going to work Saturday classes with a young woman named Anna who knows more about humility than I do. You're going to haul clay and sweep floors and fix a leaky swamp cooler with your hands instead of a phone. You're going to sign a simple agreement, Attorney Cho drafted, saying you won't try to sell my house again, won't contest the trust, Won't act as if my life is a boat you can steer. In exchange, I'll help you and Laura look your debt in the eye, not erase it. No one learns from erasing. We'll build a plan you don't hate. We'll put money where it belongs, into people and into work, not into panic. He stared at the street, at the lemon tree, at his shoes. Okay, he said for the third time. Okay. Double quotes, inside. I printed chose agreement plain language. 3 pages, no traps. Mark read it once, twice. He signed it. I signed it. My hands didn't shake. That night, I called Valentina. Bring Anna to the casita in February, I said. I'm bringing a man who needs to learn how to be useful. We always have room for one more, she said, and one more after that. February smelled like snow on sage. Mark and I flew into Albuquerque and drove up with the sky an impossible blue that makes a person feel forgiven before he asks. The casita welcomed us with its blue door and its quiet. The box with the blue ribbon sat on the kitchen shelf like a friend. Anna arrived Saturday morning, hair pulled into a bun that didn't bother to hide its impatience. She had hands like my mother's, capable, blunt, fine. You're Dan? She said, taking me in with one glance. You look like you put things back where they belong. Sometimes, I said. She turned to Mark. And you're the son who needs to learn that paper isn't a plan. It's a suggestion. He blinked. She grinned. I'm kidding. Kind of. Come on. The kids are here. They were. 4 boys, 2 girls, 1 quiet kid with a sketchbook, 1 loud kid who needed a job. We set up in the front room that. Table, a landing pad for worksheets, and coils of clay. The rug rolled back into the corner like a sleeping dog. The swamp cooler hummed like a third ant. Okay, Anna said, clapping. Today we're doing 2 things, bowls and basic electrical, because you need to eat and you need to not set your house on fire. They made bowls that looked like bowls. Mostly, they wired a lamp from a kit Val had scrounged from a donor who loved kids and hated lamps that didn't work. Mark held a spool of wire, while a boy named Theo used a screwdriver like a wand. When Theo's face did that small, precise thing boys' faces do, when they finish something they didn't think they could, Mark looked like someone had just handed him his own heart back. During cleanup, Anna sat on the counter and told me about on how she loved the drafting lab and hated the way some professors talked like math belonged to men. She told me about Alma, who'd married a decent man, soft as bread, and learned to sleep without listening for footsteps. She saw you, I said, nodding toward the photo on the shelf. Anna followed my eyes. She saw me, she said. She made me feel like being good at bowls mattered as much as ballet. I didn't know old people could do that. We're not all old, I said. Some of us are just surprisingly fragile 20-year-olds in bad suits, she laughed. You sound like Val. You fell into a rhythm. Mornings, kids. Afternoons, fixes. Evenings, cards at Ruthie's table while she told us stories. About a husband who'd been dead 22 years and still managed to make her laugh. Just by being the point of a story she'd told too many times. On the 4th day, Mark spilled. His debt on the table between the Pozole bowls. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't apologize into the floorboards. He just laid it out. The car he bought because he was tired of feeling like he was losing. The home equity line he told. Himself was an investment. The tuition bill he'd shoved to the back of a drawer. Like paper could expire if you starved it of air. I don't want you to fix this, he said, surprising me with the words I'd planned to make him say. I want you to sit with me while I fix it. Deal, I said. But I'm going to make a chart. He groaned. Not a chart. A small one, I said. And then we'll throw it away. We built something that wasn't a spreadsheet and wasn't a fantasy. We wrote down numbers and didn't lie to them. We set up autopay on the loans Mark hated so much he couldn't make himself look at them. We picked up a phone and called a credit card company and gently terrified a manager into lowering an interest rate because I have an old man's voice that sounds like someone who could write a letter to the editor and keep at it until the world changed. The last night we hosted the kids and their parents at the casita. Alma came with a tray of tamales and a hug that cracked my ribs. Valentina brought a cake. Ruthie brought a story. Anna led a toast that ended with, to Helen, who had hands that said yes.
Ah.
And I had to step outside and breathe under the ristros for a minute so my face could reset. Back in Ventura, the lemon tree had switched to the buttoned-up green it wears when the air thinks it's spring. Nora met us in the driveway with grocery bags and an expression that said she was trying very hard not to ask questions that felt like prying. "How was it?" she asked. I looked at Mark. He looked at me. "Work," he said. "Good work." We ate in the kitchen like people who had done a day well. After dinner, Mark stood up and took a folded piece of paper from his pocket. He handed it to me. "I wrote something," he said, rubbing his neck like a boy who'd been handed the wrong cue card. It was a letter, short, in the clean print he'd used since third grade because cursive made him feel like he was lying. "Dad, I'm sorry for trying to sell your life out from under you. I was scared. That's not an excuse. It's a GPS pin. I'm walking back from there. Laura and I are meeting with a counselor. I'm working with a debt guy Nora found who doesn't sound like a late-night commercial. I'm going to Ana's Saturday classes once a month. I won't touch your house again. I won't ask you about the money Mom left because it's yours. If you ever want to help Emily with college, we'll be grateful. If you don't, we'll be okay. I want to be the kind of son that makes you a good dad even after you're done raising me. Love." Kai folded the letter and put it in my pocket like a talisman. "Okay," I said, because it was the right word. And then because I was learning to be the kind of father who kept talking after the important part. "I'm proud of you." He cried like a man who didn't want to and let himself anyway. Laura watched him from the sink, dish towel in her hands like a flag she'd been trying to decide which way to wave. She stepped into him without fanfare. They held on. In March, I called Attorney Cho and asked her to help me write a check that felt like a vow. We endowed the San Isidro Fund with $200,000, enough to cover small grants and Saturday snacks for a decade if no one got ambitious enough to lay a foundation if someone did. We opened a 529 plan for Emily with a lump sum that made Laura cry, and made Beverly bring me a pot roast and an apology for talking like money could make love behave. I kept the rest of the $480,000 where it was supposed to be, keeping me housed and the lemon tree watered and a roof patched in Santa, Faye and a cushion for days when grief blew the legs off the table, spring stretched into summer. The casita became what Helen wanted it to be, a place where kids did homework while the swamp cooler rattled, where a man named Dan and a woman named Anna argued about whether a bowl should be sanded, smooth, or left with the thumbprints in it. Back home, my house became what I wanted it to be, a place I was not ashamed to love loudly in July. Beverly came by with Emily while Laura took a nap, and Mark met with the debt guy who did not sound like a late-night commercial. Emily and I made lemonade with too much sugar. Beverly watched us from the table, fingers wrapped around a mug like she wanted to hold something steady and chose ceramic. "I was wrong," she said, out of nowhere. "About what?" I asked. "About thinking safety comes from signing first," she said. "Sometimes it comes from staying, from not moving a man when the house is holding him up." I nodded. "Sometimes it comes from telling a woman she's not in charge of a story that isn't hers," I said. She smiled. "That too." In August, Nora drove out with a man she'd been seeing, face open in a way that told me this one might last. We ate on the patio under the lemon tree. I told stories about Helen that made us laugh and cry at the same time. The plates were pushed back, and Emily had wandered inside to watch something that shouted from the TV. Mark cleared his throat. "Can we go to Santa Fe in December?" he asked. "All of us?" "I want Emily to see it. I want Laura to see what Mom built with her Saturdays. I want to show up before I'm asked." "Of course," I said. "I'll ask Ruthie to save us 2 chairs and a story." Of December, we landed in Albuquerque and drove up with hot coffee and a bag of burritos and a playlist that made Emily roll her eyes and sing anyway. The casita welcomed us like we'd never left. The kitchen table hosted 3 generations of hands. Valentina and Anna hugged everyone like a revolution. Alma brought tamales. Ruthie brought her same story, told better about the time her husband tried to fix a pipe with duct tape and no plan, and flooded the back room and then danced with her bare foot on the wet floor because what else do you do when the world tells you it's ridiculous? You dance. We lit farolitos along the wall, paper bags glowing like small lanterns against the cold. We stood in the courtyard and watched the sky do the thing Helen had promised the hills. Turning the color of peaches, Mark squeezed my shoulder. "Thanks," he said, "for making me pack what mattered." I laughed, the sound landing on the warm air like a bird that trusts its branch. "I had already packed," I said, "but they weren't my boxers. Not the ones you needed. Those were yours. The ones with space for apology and for work. I just labeled them for you." He nodded. "Fair." We went back inside where it was loud and good. Kids from Saturday classes tumbled through the door, bringing with them cold air and news about finals and a lamp someone had rewired without dying. Anna climbed onto a chair and raised a glass of sparkling cider. "To Helen," she said. "Who knew hands could hold more than we're told?" We drank to that. We drank to a house in Ventura that didn't get sold. We drank to a casita in Santa Fe that would outlast us all. Not because paper said so, but because people did. We drank to a man who learned that no was not a door slamming, but a porch light. Staying on for the right guest later, when the farolitos burned low and the kids had drifted home, and the casita settled into its winter creeks. Both of them younger than the stories I could tell, and I traced Helen's name the way. I used to trace her back when she stood in front of the sink and pretended she needed my hands to find the plates. I did it. Kept the porch light on. The picture did not answer, didn't need to. The casita breathed. The lemon tree waited. The world, for once, felt like a place where a man could sit still and still be moving. The morning after we flew home from Santa Fe, I found the plan in the least mysterious place in the world, inside Helen's recipe binder, behind the page for lemon bars. It wasn't a legal document or a letter on heavy paper. It was a 4x6 index card, yellowed at the corners, topped with her handwriting, 10-year porchlight plan. Under it, 7 lines, each with a square she'd drawn to check off when she was satisfied life had done what she asked. Year 1, keep the house, keep breathing, say no out loud. Santa Fe, Saturdays begin. Year 2, make Ventura useful. 1 open garage night a week. Feed whoever knocks. Year 3, Anna runs the table. You run the tools, bridge the town's 1 kid a year. Year 4, give away a decision every month, a yes fund. Keep it small and real. Year 5, choose a steward. If it's Mark, you'll know why. If it's Nora, you'll know how. Year 6, if your bones hurt less in salt air, say so. If they hurt less in dust, say that to DR 7 to 10. Make it so ordinary to learn with your hands that no one calls it charity. Bonus box, when you can, stop counting years. Call it living. She'd left tiny notes in the margins. Next to year 2, your open garage chili is better than mine, don't gloat. Next to year 4, name it the Porch Light Fund. Rules. 1, show up, to bring a wrench. 3, tell someone else later so they can show up too. I held the card like a map and laughed, because only Helen could tuck a whole life into the back of a dessert. So we began. Year 2 started the first Thursday in March. I rolled the garage door up and dragged sawhorses to the driveway. I made a pot of chili because food opens mouths. I stuck a handwritten sign to the front porch post. Open garage night, THU 690FIX. What you brought, learn what you want. TAT if you're hungry, bring a wrench if you've got one. If you don't, bring yourself. At 6:07, nobody. At 6:14, Theo from Santa Fe texted a photo of a lamp glowing like the sun in his mother's living room. It works. And my eyes got hot for no good reason. At 6:23, my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez walked over with a busted chair and a skeptical eyebrow. At 6:31, teenager I'd seen skateboarding past 4 years, rolled up with a chain ring in one hand and the other stuffed in his hoodie. At 6:40, Beverly appeared with an extension cord and the lemon tart box repurposed for brownies. I can make ledgers, she announced. For inventory. For snacks. Do it, I said, and gave her a pen. By 7:15, we had 6 people. 3 problems. 1 playlist Nora insisted on curating because she doesn't trust me with music, and exactly enough chili. We fixed the chair, taught a chain how to behave, and pretended not to notice when the quiet kid from across the street took a third brownie because his courtesy does not extend to sugar at 8:59. I turned the light over the workbench down too. A lazy glow? We were being neighbors with a schedule. Porch light nights became a thing. Not viral, not big, just a rhythm. Thursday evenings filled with the peculiar sound of women learning how to use a drill without apologizing and boys discovering that sanding is a meditation if you let it be. The little sign was enough. Word did what it does. Mark came every other week. He swept and fetched and learned to let someone else hold the drill. He spent Saturdays one a month back in Santa Fe with Anna, who didn't go easy on him. You still grip like a man trying to hold a future he hasn't earned, she said one afternoon, guiding his hand on the wheel. Relax, the clay knows. If you're lying, he learned. Slowly, he talked less and did more. The bills he'd laid out on my kitchen table like a confession started to shrink. Not because I paid them, he would have known if I had, but because he stopped pretending. They were monsters. He made a budget with the debt counselor Nora found, and he didn't call it a punishment, he called it a plan. On a Tuesday in May, he texted me a picture of his last high-interest card balance at zero and the text, "No parade. Paper chains." Had a party anyway. Beverly brought a casserole and made a toast that began with, "I was wrong," and ended with, "I'm still learning," which is the bravest sentence I've ever heard from her mouth. Anna and Valentina flew out for a long weekend in June. They stood in my garage with their hands on their hips and looked at the tool wall like they were appraising a horse. "We need a real drill press," Anna said. "It's a first aid kit that isn't just Band-Aids and good intentions." I nodded and bought both. "That press is beautiful," Beverly said, running a finger along the base. "Where did the money come from?" "From the Porchlight Fund," I said, patting my back pocket where the small checkbook lived like a promise. "And from me. And from the coffee can on the bench. That seems to fill itself when I'm not looking." I audited it, she said. "The coffee can. You made $17.25 last month and spent $38.40 on screws and cookies. I'll make brownies next time." "Deal," I said. July brought heat and the kind of long evenings that make fathers and grandfathers noble and dirty in every photo. We built a raised garden, bed for Mrs. Alvarez and a bookshelf for the family 2 doors down and a ramp for Mr. Okonkwo, who won't use it because my legs still know stairs, but whose daughter started smiling again when she saw him eye it like a truce. On a Thursday, a boy named Jas came with a box fan and a problem. "It makes a noise like a squirrel crying," he said. We took it apart on the bench and I taught him how to clean the motor gently and not be afraid. When it whirred quiet again, he lifted his chin the smallest amount. "I can fix things," he said, like he was arguing with an old teacher in his head. "You can," I said. "Come back next week." He did. Kids that age don't return because we ask. They return because their hands remember. By August, the bridge between towns wasn't metaphor anymore. We picked one kid from Ventura to send to Santa Fe for a weekend with Anna's Saturday classer fare. Food and an envelope with $20 for something foolish. We picked one kid from Santa Fe to send our way. We called it the Bridge Week, and it was really an excuse for teenagers to feel like the world is big and small at the same time. Theo came west and wired a lamp in my garage with Jas, who showed him our lemon tree like he'd grown it himself. Luz came west in the fall and painted Emily's hands on butcher paper in Helen's kitchen. Careful lines transforming into a portrait so exact, I felt the sort of pride that rings. That's how I'll remember her. Luz said, holding the paper by the edges like a relic. "When I'm at school and my hands won't listen." "Your hands listen," I said. "They just argue first. We have that in common," she said, smiling. In September, Nora brought news to the table with easy grace. "We're engaged," she said, showing a ring that wasn't loud, wasn't coy, was exactly what Nora would wear when she was late to a meeting and washing her hands in the bathroom because it matters. "His name is Malik. He smells like cinnamon and listens like a chair." "Like a chair?" Beverly said. "Caught a good chair," Nora said. "The kind you sit in and exhale." "We toasted," Emily yelled finally, which made Nora laugh, and hide her face in my shoulder like she was 8 again in October. A thing happened to remind me that plans are scaffolding, not buildings. I woke up at 3 a.m. with my heart writing an essay in my chest about how I'd live. Are you scared? Nora asked in a quiet waiting room. Enough to change? I said change looked like sneakers on the beach at 6 a.m. and walnuts in my oatmeal and Beverly trying to force kale into a casserole. We can call it a quiche, she said, and we told her no one wanted that. I stepped back inside my own life again. I learned the names of the young people who nodded at me on the strand. I brought a thermos of coffee and a notebook to the pier and wrote down what I saw. A kid teaching his little brother to cast. 8. A couple arguing softly about dog names. A man like me standing so still you'd think he was waiting for someone to return from the water with an answer. My heart steadied. Our hands didn't stop. Year 3 began in December without fanfare. Helen's boxers on the card were getting checked almost by themselves. Anna ran the table. I ran the tools. The bridge made sense. The Porchlight Fund wrote small. Checks that made large differences: $112 for a bus pass for a girl who wanted to get to the community college without asking for rides. $73 for a boy whose sneakers were so thin his socks showed rain. $464 a teacher's after-school kit that included sockets, wire and paper towels, because I've learned every classroom needs 1,000 paper towels. At Christmas, we went back to Santa Fe. We put Farolitos on the wall, and my heart did a soft, grateful thing when the sky did the peach trick again. Ruthie threatened to tell her story of the duct-taped pipe, and then told a new one about a raccoon that stole her bread. Valentina made hot chocolate so thick you needed a spoon. Anna stood by the door with her hands in her pockets like someone whose work has made a home for her. Mark stood next to me and watched the Farolitos glow. We paid off the last of the terrible debt, he said, voice careful in the cold. Not all of it, but the worst of it. We used paper chains again. I'm proud of you, I said for the second time that year, and it didn't feel like an echo. He nodded, then added, I didn't sell anything to do it, just time and pride. That's the expensive stuff, I said. We came home too. Find a letter waiting under the mat in Ventura, an envelope with Valentina's slanted hand. Anna got her acceptance to the master's program. Construction Management, UNM. She starts in fall. She wants to keep the Saturday classes. She wants to expand them if she can find another table. Your casita is stretched. If you're ready, think about building a shade out back. We can run classes. Outside in spring. I'll find someone whose uncle owes him a favor. You'll find someone with a strong back. P.S. Your porch light is famous. Kids say when it's on in 2 towns, they feel less likely to mess up. P.P.S. That's not science, that's a story. Keep telling it. I read the letter twice. Then I opened my notebook and wrote under the date shade. Back patio. Santa Fe. Spring, and I wrote underlined twice. Keep telling it. Year 4 came like rain. Steady, filling, nourishing. The Porchlight Yes Fund got a bank account and a boring binder because Beverly insisted. I made a rule and taped it to the inside cover. We say yes once a month. The yes has to be specific, no help in general. The yes has to be something we can point to in a week and say, that mattered. We tell someone else about our yes not for applause, but for momentum. The first yes was to Jas. He wanted a basic bike tech certification class at the community college. $225, he mowed lawns and saved $140. We covered the rest and the bus pass. He came back on a Thursday night with a grin heavy enough to pull rain. I can do bearings now, he said. I can do bearings in my sleep. Don't, I said. Grease stains, sheets. March came with the sort of blue sky that makes ducks honest and men feel 20 years younger. We built the shade at the casita with 4 posts, cross beams, and laughter that needed no translation. Jas and Theo argued about whether a level lies. If the ground is pleading, Luz painted a vine on one post that looked like it wanted to grow past us. Ruthie told us when to stop because she can count 2 timber faster than any man I've met. On the last afternoon, we stood back. The shade fell just right. The table slid under it like it had always been waiting for a roof. Anna wiped her forehead and said, to nobody and everybody, we made a place. Your mother could see this, Valentina murmured beside me. Has to be smug in heaven, she would say. Heaven's just a better funded community center, I said. With decent coffee, June arrived with Nora's wedding. We borrowed the casita's idea and strung lights out back. Malik looked at my daughter like he'd finally reached a station he didn't know he'd been walking toward his whole life. Beverly cried into a cloth napkin and then helped me load chairs and then told me, as we stacked the last one, I didn't know how to be soft. I'm learning. You're good at ledgers, I said. You can be good at both, we launched. Year 5 by accident. One Thursday in August, Mark came early, no clipboard, no itinerary. He set out the chili bowls. He checked the drill bits. He greeted Jas with a handshake that didn't overcompensate. He had, I realized, become heir to the garage without either of us declaring it. Later, after the kids had gone and the lights were down to embers, I took out Helen's card and drew a small check in the square next to Year 5. Choose a steward. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't have to. He was already doing the thing I would have asked him to. The rest of Year 5 wrote its own pages. The bridge took a kid named Matty to Santa Fe, who'd never left Ventura County. He came home with clay under his nails and a new way of standing. We helped a woman named Tessa start a tool-lending library out of the old post office annex. Made a rule that if you borrowed a drill twice, you had to teach someone else how to use it once. Beverly became treasurer of the Porchlight Fund and shocked us all by resisting the urge to stack restrictions on the money we had to rules. Say yes once a month. Tell the story. Stories are assets, she said, and meant it. If you're still with me, it means you care as much about the long middle as the beginning and the end. So here's the long middle. Plain. We said yes to a girl named Shay who wanted a sewing machine so she could fix uniforms for her soccer team and make her own prom dress, $119, and countless hours of joy closing, parenthesis. We said yes to Mr. Okonkwo, who wouldn't use the ramp but agreed to let Joss and me put grab bars by his tub if I didn't tell his daughter we did. She found out anyway and cried and brought us stew. We said yes to a teacher in Santa Fe who wanted to add a small soldering kit to her after-school room and sent us a photo of 3 sixth graders in safety glasses grinning like thieves. We said yes to a Ventura mom who needed one tire to pass inspection so she could keep her night shift job cleaning the mall after the teenagers left it sticky. We said yes, even when yes made us uncomfortable. We said yes when it was a $9 pack of AA batteries. We said yes when it was $600 for a course that would move a kid from I like this to I can get paid for this. We said yes, and then we told the story in the garage, around the table, at the casita, so that the next person who had $9 or $600 could add their yes. Year 8 brought grief back to sit with us. Not as an enemy this time, but as a teacher who visits and leaves cookies on the counter. Ruthie died in April, 24 years after her husband. 82 years after she taught her body to take up space with grace. We filled the community center with chairs and stories. The man who runs the lumber yard cried, describing the way she always insisted on carrying her own 2x4 south. A girl from Saturday. Class held up a bowl Ruthie had made with rings a little uneven and said she told me not to fix it. She said my thumbprints prove I was there, dedicated the shade to her, carved her name into the crossbeam. At dusk, the Ferriltos made it look like a promise. Anna spoke like a woman who knew where her voice belonged. She taught me to. Stop before things were perfect, she said. That's the only way to keep making things. I went home and sat under my lemon tree until the mosquitoes found me and thought about stopping before perfect. It felt like a language I could learn. Year 9 collapsed into itself in a good way, days feeling like weeks, weeks like afternoons. Mark took over the garage more often than not. He talked less, listened more, got out of the way when Beverly and Laura turned inventory night into a gossip session that did more therapy than anyone would admit. Emily finished her first paid service, call replacing a capacitor on a residential unit while a man named Frank watched her with a mix of confusion and admiration and then gave her a $20 tip like he'd witnessed a small magic and didn't know the going rate. Nora and Malik had a baby girl in May. We named no one after anyone and honored everyone by calling her Zoe. She had the kind of cry that made my spine straighten, and the kind of grip that made me feel like I could pick up a house if she asked. We taught Emily how to hold her, so she didn't look like she was carrying nitroglycerin. We taught Mark to stop swaying long after the crying stopped. We taught Beverly that lullabies are negotiations, and she is a master negotiator. Year 10. Arrived unnoticed, like a good neighbor. The casita's shade had weathered properly, gray now like the old beams of a barn. The porch light ledger had coffee stains and numbers in. Beverly's neat hand that made me smile because she'd stopped circling totals in red. The bridge weeks ran on their own steam. The Thursday chili recipe lived in 3 homes. On a September morning, I sat on the stoop in Santa Fe with Valentina, feet on cool tile, mug warming my palms. "It's time," I said. She nodded once. "You sure?" she asked. "Ritual?" "I am," I said, and meant it. "You'll take the deed? We'll take the responsibility," she said. "That's heavier than paper," I smiled. "I've learned." That afternoon, we signed the acceleration. Documents already written years ago and chose precise prose. The casita became the San Isidro Funds, with my right to live there as long as I liked. It felt like opening a gate that was always meant to be open. We celebrated with paper cups of Too Sweet Punch and a dance. Ruthie would have approved of on a floor we'd flooded years ago with our own tears and mistakes. That winter, back in Ventura, I found one more note in Helen's binder tucked behind. A recipe for a cake she never perfected. Wasn't a plan exactly, more like a benediction. You did it. You said no so you could say yes. You kept a roof and gave away a table. If you're reading this, don't make the last years a monument. Keep the porch light on and your shoes by the door. I folded the card and put it in my wallet behind my driver's license and the AARP card they sent me, whether I wanted it or not. I took a walk down to the pier. The pelicans were doing their prehistoric circles like parables. I didn't rush.